おはようございます。7時に定刻となりましたので、ただいまから第18回アイコン塾を、始めたいと思います。まだですね、講演者のティム先生、バイクマン先生が、ズームに入っておられないので、しばらく待とうと思うんですけれども、まあ、その間に、今日司会をお願いしております、東京大学救急集中治療教授、土井健人先生にご挨拶をいただこうと思います。土井先生、よろしくお願いいたします。
えっと、はい。おはようございます。皆さん、本日第18回、アイコン塾ですね。eICU の、開発とインプレメンテーションということで、エモリー大学のお話をですね、していただく予定になっております。演者は2人いらしてですね、広告にあったと思いますけど、ティモシー・ブックマン先生ですね、と、チェリル・ヒンデルソン先生と。ブックマン先生はもう高名な先生で CCM のエディターインチーフだったり、エモリの遠隔 IC をずっと、長年引っ張ってこられた先生ということで皆さんご存知かと思います。で、チェリル先生は、原則はですね、ナースの方で、遠隔 ICU の責任者ということで、いろいろやってこられて、細かいノウハウおよび苦労話等々が聞けるっていうふうには今日は伺っておりますので、よろしくお願いいたします。ただ、はい、ちょっと、ブッカン先生がまだいらっしゃってないの
はい。
ですが、どうしましょう、先に。
Cheryl、ちょっと
はい。
聞いてみ、Cheryl, can you hear me? お
Yes,
そら
I'm
く、
sorry. I think Dr. Buckman is on
う
a
ん、
different link. I'm sharing with him the correct link now.
OK。
あ、
You have to understand on our side, it came up in Japanese,
うんふん
so it was hard to tell what we
I
were
see.
supposed to use, I think. So I've
OK。
sent it to him. Hopefully, he'll be on in just a minute.
OK。Thank you。じゃあ、ちょっ
I
と、しばらく待ちましょうか、土井先生。
はい、わかりました。
I am happy to get started, or we can wait just a minute. I think he'll be on in
OK。
just a moment.
Let's wait like 2 or 3 minutes. And then,
Okay,
if you're not materialized, let's start.
I'm pretty sure he will. He's very
Okay.
good at that.
Okay. No problem. うんで、皆さん申し訳ありませんが、しばらくお待ちください。
There he is.
Okay.
Now I have the correct link. Thank you.
Hi, good morning or good evening.
Good morning, good evening.
で土井先生、お願いします。
Hi, Tim. My name is Ken Doi. I'm the intensivist and working at the University of Tokyo in Japan. And I'm very happy to be a chairperson in this great lectures of you tools. And let me start with this ICON ICU Collaboration Network seminar. This is the 18th. Okay. Oops. So now we're very happy to have you two great speakers from the Emory University. The first speaker is the Professor Timothy Buchman. He's the leader of this critical care medicine, and he's now currently the medical director at the Emory eICU Center and professor of the surgery and anesthesiology in Emory University School of Medicine. He was the editor-in-chief in critical care medicine and other major journals, and the founding director of the Emory Critical Care Center. So, Professor Buchman, are you ready for sharing your slide, or you want to use?
I am prepared to begin the lecture. I
Okay.
wish to announce that Ms. Hiddleson and I will be giving the lecture together. So you may introduce her now if you wish.
Okay. Let me move on to the not second, but the other speaker of the Ms. Cheryl Henderson. Yeah, she's now currently the director of the eIC operation at the Emory University, and she's been working for telemedicine in ICU for many, many years and contribute to the so much to this field. Okay, and then I guess Cheryl are also currently working together with the Professor Buchman. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
I'm very happy
Very good.
to have you here. All right. You guys ready? Oh, okay, good.
Good. Now I will share my lecture.
Okay.
Hold on for one moment. Good. And now you should see the lecture appropriately.
Yes.
Good.
We can see it. Okay, please.
So Ms. Hiddleson and I are pleased to present the lessons learned over 14 years in our eICU. First, we always tell people that we have no conflicts of interest relevant to this presentation. However, we are speaking as individuals. We are not speaking for the university, the healthcare system, the society, or the United States government. During this talk, we will speak about a bit of background. Then we will talk about the lessons learned during our years doing eICU. We will talk about establishing and maintaining relationships. We will talk about staffing, costs, and risks. We will then go on to talk about things we would tell our younger selves if we were able to speak to ourselves from the times past. Finally, we will make some closing remarks. We will begin with the background, the situation as it exists. As you see, there is a chasm, a gap between the available staff and the needs of patients. That chasm has to be supported over time because the bridge is breaking. And the way it is supported is by healthcare personnel holding up from below so that there can be a connection between available staff and patient need.
So you can see that Georgia is in the southeast district, southeastern portion of the United States, and is about 2.5 times smaller than Japan, or Japan is 2.5 times larger than the state of Georgia. Georgia has about 10 million people now. The population grows about 1% per year, often from the population of older Americans wanting to move to the south from the snowy northern weather. It's warmer here, less snow. So we began in 2010 with around 9.7 million with a growth rate, of 1% a year. We're now around 11 million. Population growth has been concentrated closer to the Atlanta area, which is where Emory is located. Georgia, like Japan, is aging and aging much faster in the 75 and older group. So older Americans require more ICU care. Emory Healthcare understands this growth and have really worked to prepare for it. They have been purchasing additional hospitals and expanding the current hospitals that they have. We now serve 6 Emory hospitals in several ICUs. Many of these hospitals actually also have several ICUs. Each hospital has several critical care units, and they're all different types of units. Across the Emory 6 hospitals we're discussing, there are 350 critical care beds.
The goal in the United States was to place an intensivist in every intensive care unit. This was based on findings from the turn of the century, findings that greater use of intensivists in the ICU led to reductions in ICU and hospital mortality. The problem was that there were not going to be enough intensivists to care for this rapidly growing population. On the left, I am showing the famous paper from Derek Angus, the division between the demand in blue and the supply in gold, and the arrow shows where we are today, with the demand for ICU doctors far outstripping the supply. This was so shocking that the US government did its own study separate from the Angus study and found the same result. There would be a shortfall in the number of doctors. What to do? The Emory solution was to combine two innovations into a novel healthcare delivery system. We involved advanced practice providers, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants specially trained in critical care medicine with tele-ICU to create a new care delivery model. This model was so innovative that it received an award from CMS to support its development. Now, we received this award in 2011, and by 2025, by the beginning of next year, we employ more than 230 advanced practice professionals, advanced nurses, and advanced physician assistants specially trained in critical care. I'm not going to talk about those professionals. Rather, today, we are going to talk about the Emory eICU and lessons we have learned building tele-ICU support. The first lesson is the importance of establishing and maintaining relationships among the eICU, the tele-ICU, and all of the places we serve. We can standardize care, but every relationship between the eICU and a particular ICU, and we serve dozens of ICUs, every relationship is unique. Before you can manage patients, you must manage relationships between the eICU and the ICU point of care staff. These will always be unique needs.
So, as you can see, I just wanted to add also, when Tim was talking about the big gap in physician need and physician production, we have the same issue with nurses in the US. The need for critical care nurses is ever increasing, but the number of nurses going into the specialty is not keeping up. The bedside nurses are critical in making the eICU function correctly. And critical care nurses are very independent and very proud of their work and what they do, and sure that they know the best way, and they usually do. Unless the eICU staff is seen as being respectful and supportive, those nurses with vast experience and knowledge will underutilize the eICU and ignore the advice or reject the support. So it's very important to have buy-in from nurses for a program like this who are working in the ICUs from the very beginning to try and enlist them into the program, investing in it, and trusting the staff they'll be working with.
ICU doctors are often tired. They are overworked. If they perceive that their authority is challenged, they will reject the eICU and they will instruct their nurses and junior doctors to avoid contacting the eICU. We have found that there are useful phrases in communicating with ICU doctors. I observed. Can I unburden you and help you by placing an order? What would you like me to communicate to other physicians or to family members? It is important that every bedside ICU doctor must see the eICU doctor as supportive and not argumentative. The most effective interactions are those in which the authority of the bedside team is repeatedly acknowledged, while the eICU takes responsibility for fulfilling some necessary actions. eICU staff must accept that authority lies at the bedside, and eICU staff must accept responsibility for carrying out the plan established at the bedside.
Here are some of the most common concerns that we have heard over the years from staff in the units where we serve. Common concerns are, what did the eICU do with my patient? What did they do while I was off shift during the night? And that can be a lack of communication when one physician or one nurse doesn't communicate with the other. Lack of answers. Why did the eICU do this to my patient? Again, communication and answering questions will help deter that. Discomfort with the doctor. This doctor doesn't know enough about my specialty. Our physicians actually have a very broad range of knowledge and expertise, as our nurses do. And we try to make sure that is communicated and understood. Distrust of the doctor and the healthcare system. These people are not at the bedside. They do not know my patient and their family. That is something we work to overcome with the hospitals we provide service to that are not part of the Emory healthcare system. So we constantly have to be sure that we're in touch with what is going on. Choosing a doctor. So when you're working with the eICU, you don't get to choose the doctor. We only have one doctor. At some point, we'll have two, but you still don't really get to choose. Unexplained tests and treatments. When the eICU physician puts an order in, they always communicate with the bedside staff about the order, why they decided to put it in, and they have a discussion. And they also document this in the chart of the patient to make sure that the staff on the other understands what's going on. There are always going to be communication issues and concerns, and trying to head that off in the beginning is very important.
No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you plan to maintain a productive relationship, eventually someone will be upset about something. It is important to establish a standard plan that will address these inevitable concerns. Something will always go wrong, and there must be a plan to acknowledge what has happened and to deal with it. From this point, we are going to begin discussions about staffing. It is important to ask what education and qualifications should be required of staff doctors and nurses? And is there parity, equality among these requirements? Do we demand highly trained doctors and highly experienced nurses? This is important because junior doctors and junior nurses will see and recognize parity in these requirements. A reminder, your eICU is only as strong as the weakest staff member. It is therefore important to set standards for participation in the eICU very high.
Credentialing in the US, I don't know what it's like in your country, but it is very complicated here, and it takes a great deal of time to complete it and to make sure that you're adhering to all of the bylaws, laws, and rules of different medical societies and different medical organizations in different states. For our state, every physician, every staff member has to be credentialed at each hospital we provide care to. There's not just one body that credentials and then it applies everywhere. It is a great deal of paperwork, and as I said, bylaws have to be acknowledged. Importantly, enabling access to local medical records, PAC systems, et cetera, so our physicians and nurses can do the work they need to. How much personal time will be required to maintain credentialing agreements? We have an office that takes care of this, but it still requires the physicians to spend quite a bit of time to help complete the credentialing.
Once someone joins the eICU, on-camera consistency is important. As you see Cheryl and me speaking, you'll notice that we have the same background on camera. We have our staff wear either blue or white shirts with Emory eICU Center logo. We have standard ways of behaving on camera, interacting with staff and patients and families that always include a warm welcome, an anticipation of their needs, and a fond farewell to make sure those needs are met. These standards are your brand, and they must be taught, they must be explained, and they must be enforced. Bedside staff and patients have expectations that must be met by every team member. So when you develop your eICU, you must ask, what is our brand? And how do we manage and enforce our identity? The most important way of enforcing identity is to embrace the idea of service, that this is a service delivery process as much as it is a medical care process. Staff must understand that no question is too simple, no request is too complicated, no opportunity to guide or teach should ever be ignored, and to verify that all of the needs at the bedside have been addressed. Now, sometimes the ICU that we serve may be in a small hospital that does not have excess capability, so that if there is a sick patient who might benefit from ECMO and the hospital doesn't have ECMO, you don't suggest ECMO. All you can do is suggest transfer. Again, eICU work is customer service work, and it is therefore important to orient staff to best customer service practices. Now, in order to do this, it is key to have planning and scheduling to ensure that there is always continuity of staff. Planning is different from scheduling. Planning deals with what the schedule must fulfill. How many people, how many shifts, fair allocation of holidays, and rules for seniority. Scheduling involves actually putting a person into a date. It has to be completely transparent. It has to conform to planning rules, and there has to be a backup schedule for illness. It is important to identify who is responsible for the planning, who is responsible for the scheduling, and to have a way to resolve conflicts. Your staff are your most valuable asset. Retention is always desired. It is much more costly to recruit and train new staff than it is to hold and retain existing staff. That means that investments in eICU staff satisfaction are important to the success of the program. Providing food and drinks, comfortable chairs, token gifts like gift cards, all tell your staff that they are important. And the staff needs to perceive, they need to see that you as a leader care about their safety and comfort. Again, your staff are your most valuable assets.
Another thing that's really important, as it is in any work area, is to make sure that you have meetings on a regular basis. And those meetings should be structured so that communication and discussions happen in a way that staff feels comfortable to share concerns or questions. They should kind of be a town hall style. Leaders and staff are on the same level. In our environment, Tim and I are not above the staff, we're equal to the staff, and we work that way side by side with them. And everyone has the opportunity to speak up and voice their concerns. That's the way our program works, and we feel like it's one of the best things in our program. So developing a communication plan, knowing what is working, what isn't working, how do participants benefit from changes. My nurses have a great deal of input on how the program runs, what the practice is, any changes that we make in our practice. And Dr. Buchman does the same work with the physicians in our program.
We will now go on to understanding the costs of running eICU. Our staff costs are based on the number of individuals required to staff a given shift. In our mixed physician nurse eICU environment, we plan for one nurse for every 35 to 45 patients and one physician for between 120 to 140 patients. Our shift lengths are 12 hours. These staff costs are the largest ongoing costs of operating an eICU. It is therefore important to determine who is responsible for setting the salaries and where the money will come from.
This is a picture of our clinical operations room where our nurses and physicians work. The costs for setting up this room entail providing the hydraulic supported work desks that move up and down to help people. It provides them more comfort in doing the work. They're not sitting for 12 hours. They can stand, they can walk around. Space rental, the fees that we pay to rent the space, connectivity and infrastructure for the networking and the power that those workstations require. We buy cars. I let the staff chairs. I let the staff test all the chairs to make sure it's the most comfortable. The workstations themselves, we have lockers, supply area, computers, and monitors, of course, and different peripherals. And then we have IT staff that support all of this equipment and software that we use. Cost at the remote site. So each hospital has to install equipment so we can communicate and see the patients, families, and staff that are at the bedside. That screen on the wall is one of our physicians, and that is a nurse in one of the hospitals talking to him. So all of that equipment allows us to have bi-directional communication, and the doctor and the nurse can go in and assess the patient. It's very high resolution cameras that we use that allow them to do that. There are also servers that support the equipment, gateways for continuous physiologic monitors. We have data feeds from the bedside monitors in each room and from the EMR. There's redundant connectivity to the central site with fiber. There is also local IT staff that supports the equipment in the hospitals. Mapping remote IT feeds, I already talked about that one, sorry. Do the hospitals and the ICUs that you serve fully understand the costs? Are they prepared to support the costs, and for how long? For some of the non-Emory hospitals that we support, they're very small hospitals and they do struggle to build a model to maintain financial sustainability to pay for the program. There are also additional expenses. Tim and I are directors of the program. Our salaries have to be paid. We have at least one full-time project manager, and then we enlist other project managers when they're needed for specific builds that we have for new environments. They have to evaluate equipment, help with purchasing and installation. There's marketing and travel to the different sites to stay in touch. Disaster recovery, if we have a downtime with our equipment, what caused it? It needs to be investigated and followed up. There's also security, IT security, to keep patient information secure. Equipment replacement has to be performed on a regular schedule to make sure that all of our devices are working as they should, so our staff can provide the care and assess the patients appropriately. You have to determine who pays for these additional costs and how they're budgeted.
We turn now to the risks of tele-ICU, of eICU, and we classify these risks as follows. First, there is the question of medical legal risk. There is always concern starting eICU care that there is a risk of lawsuits and litigations in the event of bad outcomes. In fact, these are historically minimal risks. The eICU performs a service. It provides support, but does not replace bedside care. All of the electronic tools, the data and documentation, are dense by design, and it is nearly always possible to recover the data, the timing, and the actions taken. We have had no allegations of malpractice against the eICU after 13 years of continuous operation. That was achieved because the agreement between the eICU and the hospitals and ICU served carefully outlined the nature of the service. Staff must follow the agreement, and document their participation in care accordingly. The medical legal risks are small. The bigger risk is the need to quickly respond to an unexpected demand for service. During the SARS-CoV-2 global pandemic, we were asked to increase our service commitment by half overnight. We went in a single month from 104 beds served to 151 beds served. As an eICU, you should anticipate that suddenly someone wants or needs your service. And you should ask, what is your plan for such a request to suddenly increase service? On the other side, businesses, hospitals, ICUs can close. Customers may fall on hard financial times. Units may decide you're too expensive and want something less expensive, or they may decide we have solved our personnel problems and we no longer need you. These are business events that are beyond the eICU's control. What will you do if a customer suddenly declines your service? There is a risk that equipment and software has been inadequately developed, but marketed as compatible and useful with your eICU. This has been a common experience with our setting. There are literally hundreds of vendors who want to sell you something. These include major vendors. And despite promises and reputations, major vendors will often sell a product that works well during a demonstration, but is not capable of meeting the needs of the eICU. Regardless, you will still have to purchase new hardware and software as legacy systems eventually go unsupported. And it may be months or years before newly discovered problems, bugs, are ironed out. You must have a plan for service continuity when new software or hardware fails, and this means that there should always be an overlap in schedule between the old and the new to give yourself time. Finally, there is a brand new risk that we did not anticipate, and that is criminal activity at hospitals that we serve. Ransomware, that is a criminal organization invading the electronic systems of a hospital, will also cause a shutdown of our ability to provide eICU services. We are in the middle of such a ransomware attack on one of the hospitals, not an Emory hospital, but one of the outlying hospitals that we serve. Their service loss has been 8 weeks so far. This was an unexpected, unanticipated, unplanned for risk. Let us close this conversation by talking about the advice we would tell our younger selves based on the experience that we've had since 2011. If we could go back from 2024 to 2011, what would we tell ourselves about eICU? First, to envision the big picture. Growth is part of eICU. You have to manage growth, and you must be prepared to grow unexpectedly. It is therefore important to set clear objectives for the eICU program, to evaluate the threats and the risks, to identify all available resources, whether it be people or equipment or infrastructure. Just as you have done by listening to this lecture, to evaluate lessons learned by yourselves and by others working on similar challenges, to have a course of action, and to do contingency planning dealing with unexpected or adverse events. Importantly, you must manage expectations. You have to set realistic goals and timetables for your clients, for your staff, for your administrator, and for yourselves. You will be asked to do things faster and less expensive than is possible. It is better to underpromise, set longer timetables and higher costs, and overdeliver, complete tasks more quickly and under budget.
Everyone will be watching. We have actually visitors from many places, but in terms of our own administration and our supervisors, it's still a relatively new model, and people don't always understand what metrics are being met or what metrics are being exceeded because they don't understand which metrics should be used. So we had to define our own metrics because they're different than regular hospital metrics. It's better for us to provide those than to have someone else try and push us in a direction that is more geared to the inpatient hospital areas. Track performance continuously. We have reports every month that come out, and we're constantly checking. You'll be watched. You'll be watched more closely at budget time, of course, and plan for end of year reporting at the beginning of the year. Try and get ahead of things. Make sure you have those metrics chosen and develop what comes after. Stories about patient care are more important than charts and tables. We have developed a system that allows all of our clinicians to enter when they have had an interaction with a patient or another clinician or a family member and talk about what they did and how it worked. Those anecdotal stories are very important, and executives respond to those stories and understand them. Have a plan and a tool, recreated a document system our staff could access and put in that important information. Always, always have patient-centered stories. When the CMS director came to visit our program, we had a lot of metric information that involved money and outcomes. And he looked at us and said, I want to hear the stories. I want to know about the patients. So we also were able to give him that information. Practice telling the stories to different audiences because they might take them in different ways, but it's very important.
When you build an eICU, you will be asked to give lectures like the one that Cheryl and I are giving right now. In fact, in 2017, Cheryl was invited to give this lecture that's shown on the right, An Evening with Cheryl Hiddleson, to talk about the eICU. This one lecture led to the development of the first eICUs in Australia. We will now give a brief closing remark.
So we still feel that it's very important to provide our staff in the eICU with experiences and life quality and joy to try and keep them engaged and keep them happy. So the Australia program Tim talked about is one where we actually send a physician and nurse to Australia, and they provide care to Atlanta patients during nighttime hours, but they do it from daytime hours in Australia. It has been a huge source of joy and increasing quality of life for those staff members who have been able to do it. We just feel it's imperative to make sure our staff feels valued and respected and enjoy what they're doing, because that's the best way to have them deliver quality care to patients and have quality interactions with people.
eICU care is about people. Yes, it is about patients and families, but it cannot be effective unless the team feels valued. Our continuing focus on our team members and making their professional careers and their personal lives as fulfilling as possible has been the key to our success. And it allows us to share with them views, sunsets like this, as we see from our Australia program. On behalf of Cheryl and myself, it's been my pleasure to speak with you this evening. We are happy to answer questions either online or by email afterwards. We're very easy to find. I will ask the chairman to share our contact information with you so that you can reach out at any time with any questions that you may have. Thank you again for the privilege of presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Tim and Terry. So we have the one question from the audience right now. So she asked you in Japanese, and I will try to translate. Give me some time.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
We're grateful.
Okay. In Japan, many hospitals are there with more severely ill patient. So it's not centralized yet. We do have the many hospitals and many severely ill patients. And
yes.
At the same time, the bed occupancy is around 60 or 70%. So then if we're gonna have the one hub of the eICU, and then, oops, it disappeared. So connecting 30 hospitals. I mean, in Japan, we need to make one hub with the 30 or 20 satellite. But in your Emory system, you have the 5 or 6 satellites right now?
So it's a great question. At the moment, we have approximately 8 satellites, including 6 Emory hospitals and 2 outlying hospitals. But each of those hospitals has multiple ICUs. So we cover, by the time we get to this time next year, it will probably be about 20 different ICUs among those various hospitals. You are correct. A hub and spoke model is foundational to eICU care.
Yeah, we only have one hub that services all of those hospitals.
Okay.
From a central location.
Hub and spokes. Yeah, I remember the term. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and can I ask one question about the staffing and the credentiality? So, at the beginning, we are lacking the number of the sufficient ICU physicians and ICU nurses. That's why you guys started to develop the tel-ICU. But the eICU doctors and nurses should be trained so well. But at the beginning, there's a very limited number of these kind of very excellent physicians there. So then, but I'm so much impressed about your statement about keep your standard high. At the beginning, keeping high standard is a little bit difficult to start. Then the strategy should be a gradual increase of the standard from the beginning to the end, or start with very high standard and try to keep it? So which is a good way, better way?
So we started with a very high standard,
Okay.
and we have not lowered that.
Mhm.
What that meant for us, well, for Dr. Buchman, unfortunately, was the first year we were open, he worked 150 night shifts in the eICU.
At age 60.
Because we didn't have enough physicians. The nurses, I didn't have a problem with.
Oh.
All of our nurses have a minimum of 5 years in the ICU. They all have their CCRN certification. That hasn't changed either. And what we have found with the nurses is that a lot of them, after they have been in the ICU for 20 years, the physical work in the ICU is becoming very difficult. But they want to stay engaged intellectually in critical care because they love it. And when you come to our area, it's much less physically demanding for them. So we have nurses who have 40 years, 30 years experience, and they stay because they can still be a part of critical care, but not be so physically stressed. Do you want to talk about the physician piece, Tim, and why you did
I will
100?
mention the physician piece only to say that because we held our standards high, people saw it as an achievement to be permitted to join the eICU. Today, I have more physicians than we can handle who want to be part of the eICU. And I will tell you, in all honesty, I have had to dismiss a few physicians from the eICU group. They are good doctors, but they were not good at customer service.
Yeah.
The level of customer service that is required, the ability to lead from below, to say, I would like to help you. What is the best way for me to help you? Not to tell you what to do, but for me to help you be the best that you can be. Some doctors don't do that well, and they should not be part of the eICU. This is about service.
You know, and we have to be very clear that building a program like this from the ground up is not an easy thing to do. It took a lot of work from both of us those first few years.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are now still have many questions from the audience, but the time of the end is now coming. So Professor Hashimoto, should we close?
Okay, thank you very much for valuable story. So we are now in the beginning of this critical care in Japan, and your talk are very valuable for us. So I have so many questions to you, but later I'll ask you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It has been our privilege to present this lecture. We stand ready to serve and support you as you develop your eICU.
Oh, thank you very
This
much.
is a global need and a global opportunity, and it is my dream that we have participation, connection, and friendship across the globe around tele-ICU services. It is an opportunity not to be missed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day. Yeah, thank you.